everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Carrie Enright-Cato, Director of the Office of Climate Change, Technology, and Research at Connecticut Deep. Welcome to the Exploring Climate Solutions webinar series. The series is brought to you by the Governor's Council on Climate Change, also known as the GC3. Serving as an advisory body, the Council is charged with looking at the efficacy of existing policies and regulations designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and recommend new strategies to meet the state's greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. The Council is composed of 15 members from state agencies, quasi-state agencies, businesses, and nonprofits. To learn more about the GC3, please go to www.ct.gov/deep/GC3. The webinar series explores innovative and successful climate change solutions in Connecticut and beyond. The series provides firsthand accounts of high-profile municipal climate programs, climate initiatives in the corporate world, new greenhouse gas reporting frameworks, statewide sustainability programs, low-carbon fuel initiatives, and other programs and projects that help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve climate resilience. If you've missed some of our previous presentations, all of the recordings can be found on our website. Today, we're excited to have Giovanni Zinn, City Engineer for New Haven, and Don Henning, Project Manager for Engineering for the city. Giovanni and Don will be informing us about New Haven's recently released Climate and Sustainability Framework. The framework addresses climate and sustainability through 6 key strategies: electric power, buildings, transportations, materials management, land use, and green infrastructure and food. The Climate and Sustainability Framework puts forth a goal of 55% reduction from 1990 emissions by 2030. The presentation will be about 40 minutes long, and then they will open it up for questions from the audience. If you have questions, please submit them using your dialogue question box, and we'll read it aloud for Giovanni and Don to respond to at the end. Before we get started, for those of you listening via your computer speakers, and if you're experiencing poor sound quality, I do encourage you to call in using a telephone. So with that, Giovanni and Don, thank you for your willingness to present today. I'm excited to learn more about your plan, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Thank you again all for tuning in. We're very excited to be here. It's not so nice and sunny here today. It still looks like winter, but New Haven's a wonderful place. Come down, eat our pizza, and enjoy everything we have to offer. With me today is Don Henning of our engineering department as well. As a project manager, does a lot of the work around sustainability, among many other things. And we're here today to talk to you about New Haven's Climate and Sustainability Framework.
Hold on one second. So our agenda today will be covering the origin of the framework. How did we get to create this framework, and the long history that New Haven has had on working on climate-related issues. The process by which the framework was made, took about 2 years from start to finish, because it was a very inclusive process, which I think is very important for these types of projects. The content of the framework, some about our goal setting and greenhouse gas inventory, and then just looking ahead to the future.
All right, so a little bit about the origin of the framework. New Haven, we're lucky. We have had a great foundation to build on. We did our first greenhouse gas inventory in 2001, based on 1999 data. We released our climate action plan in 2004. We redid our greenhouse gas inventory in 2009. In 2010, we had an Office of Sustainability, that was created and grant supported with a DOE grant. And then in 2016, the community came together and approached Mayor Tony Harp to both renew our greenhouse gas inventory and climate action plans, but also broaden them a bit. And that started the process for a climate and sustainability framework, looking not only at sort of a narrow greenhouse gas framework, but also looking at various other challenges around sustainability and resilience that New Haven faces.
So the process for the framework, it was very organic. It was not like we had a series of steps that we were following. So we came together, the advocacy group that had come to Mayor Harp, It's called the New Haven Climate Movement, and they are kind of a coalition of a bunch of organizations that are interested in climate action in New Haven. And so we kind of came together as a steering committee. I think Yale was involved and a couple others, but really to just talk about where do we go from here. And we are really lucky to have Yale's resources. We've worked a lot with the Yale School of Forestry and the Roosevelt Institute at Yale. And the Roosevelt Institute had already been doing some work for the climate movement on looking at best practices and other climate action plans, doing kind of a large literature review across the country and the globe on what types of actions and goals are people included in their climate action plans. So we had something to start with, where we looked at that to say, okay, what are the kind of the major categories that we're going to work on for climate action? And like we said, sustainability. The city had a draft sustainability plan that was never officially released, but that covered similar topics. And so we wanted to combine these into a more general framework around climate and sustainability. So out of that, we got the 6 working groups that cover the 6 different strategies that Carrie mentioned in the intro, and we'll go into more detail on that. And the working groups included, you know, a member of the city, the most relevant city department head that covers that category. It had local experts and active community members, members of the climate movement, members of Yale, and everyone got together, and we had about 2 to 3 meetings per working group to kind of go over, well, what types of actions can New Haven take? And as part of that process, we learned a lot about what New Haven is already doing towards climate. If anything, we've probably done a poor job of you know, getting that out into the public. And so it was like a good learning process for everyone on like what we're already doing, and then where we want to go. And once we had kind of a draft list of goals and actions, we held 3 public meetings. We produced a website, we had a Facebook page, and we really solicited feedback and wanted comments on what became our framework. And so here's a couple of pictures of what that process looked like. We had printed out all the goals and actions on huge pieces of paper, and everyone came and you know, wrote comments, what they liked, what they wanted to add, questions they may have, clarifications they'd need, and stickers towards the ones that they felt most strongly about.
A couple of quick notes about sort of our internal city organization on this. You know, we had a grant-supported Office of Sustainability, and then we weren't able to continue funding it. And then we had an administration change in the city, and when Mayor Harp came in, I think she really identified the need to integrate sustainability into everything that we do as a city. And we're lucky to have a series of department heads who are very sustainability minded, and who all of us, we try to integrate sustainability into our everyday work. You know, we're the engineering department. We're responsible for bridges, roads, sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. And it is our task to really integrate sustainability into everything we do. And because we're responsible for design and construction of the infrastructure of the city, we have been tasked with taking the lead on a lot of our sustainability efforts.
So the results of all this effort, and the reason it took, you know, we got all those comments back and we had to compile them, and we really wanted to make a report that was compelling and concise, knowing that people aren't going to read 150 pages. We tried to keep it as short as possible, but dense with information. And so the result was that we had these 6 strategies, and within those we had 29 goals and 97 actions that we could take as a city, not just the municipality, but, you know, businesses, residents, organizations. The entire New Haven community is really going to be needed if we're going to address climate change in the future. And so for the report, each strategy is really a 4-page spread that has a summary, has some data, the goals and actions are listed. And then we thought it was important to list a case study or some sort of information about what's already happening in that. Of course, we had to leave out some information. There's no way we'd get through everything. But so I think at this point we could walk you through the 6 different strategies. I just put this one up as an example, electric power, for what our spread looks like. And so with electric power, the main thing is increasing renewable energy production. You know, that is the main way that we could reduce our greenhouse gas emission, create jobs, lower people's electricity bills. And the other goals include advancing outreach and education, making our energy system more resilient, and increasing resources. And you'll see in each of the 6 strategies, the need for outreach and education and resources is continually brought up and highlighted, and something that we could work on across all sectors.
One of the things that came through very clearly in our public outreach is New Haven is about 72-73% of our housing units are rental. And many of the energy programs of the state and strategies that we have in energy efficiency and renewable energy are much more tailored to, you know, owner-occupied single-family homes, are a lot easier to do because the permissions and things like that are a lot easier. Also, the laws around net metering and things like that are much more conducive to, you know, one structure, 1 meter type of setups. So there's a lot of goals and actions towards community solar, towards community choice aggregation, and other tools to try to bring as many different members of the community into being able to choose more efficient and more renewable lifestyles.
And this was one of the strategies where people were really excited to hear about what the city has been doing for renewable energy production. We had put over 3 megawatts of solar capacity on public buildings, mostly schools, but a couple other public buildings. And this is not something that people really knew about. You can't really see them unless you're a drone, unless you're at a high point. And so people thought that was something that we really need to get out and spread the word about. And we're excited to find out how we had done that.
Yeah, and we really used, you know, on our solar, it was really through power purchase agreements and the ZREC program. We were pretty aggressive on a couple of the different solicitations. You know, the city, our most recent power purchase agreements, were able to get electricity at 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour on some of our roofs of our buildings, and that basically cuts our electricity cost in roughly half with net metering. So it's been, as all of you I'm sure are aware, it's a very tough financial time for both the state and municipalities. So everything that we can do in this sort of sense has many different benefits that everyone from our environmental advocates to our budget office can very much appreciate.
Our next strategy is buildings, which is a little bit of an arbitrary split from electric power, as we use electric power in buildings. So the goals in the building strategy focus more on energy efficiency, reducing water consumption, both through infrastructure retrofits and also through behavior change. For example, one of the things that's getting some traction and getting talked about is having an energy scorecard for rental properties. Like Giovanni said, we have a lot of rental units, and you know, people may begin to change their behavior on which place they want to rent if they know a little bit about the energy use and what their utility bill and what they can expect. And so that may encourage more energy efficiency out of property owners. So that's something that we are exploring.
Yeah, I mean, there you really have a situation where there's no market force to encourage energy efficiency. You know, landlords do not usually pay for utilities. That's the tenants. The tenants are signing leases based on the lease. The total cost of renting is the lease plus the utilities. And not all rental units are treated equally in terms of energy consumption. So one of the things that, again, came very much from the community is to try to find in the next couple of years here, as we work on this, find a way to create that market force where consumers are demanding more efficient units, and landlords have a clear financial benefit and return on investment in investing in energy efficiency and renewable upgrades for their units. So, some of the other challenges that we have, we talked a little bit about the rental and home ownership, and then the renewable energies, lack of shared solar and things like that. I think one of the frustrations that we sometimes have is that, there isn't a whole lot that the city can do as a body. A lot of these things are regulated at other levels, whether state or national or whatnot. It's utilities and energy can be a rather high inertia field where it's difficult to get change, and it's something that we certainly advocate for, and a lot of our residents advocate to us to make sure that we're talking to the state and whomever else to change some of these things. And then the barrier always in government is funding, time and funding, and that obviously still continues.
So the third strategy is transportation, which was a huge topic and really could have probably created a report of its own. And it was a challenge to kind of take all the actions that people had come up with and condense them into a set of goals. But really, if you look at this transportation mode share in New Haven, really what we're looking at doing is reducing single occupancy vehicle use and promoting more public transportation options and active transportation. So part of what would help achieve that is expanding our active transportation network, having more bike lanes and that are safe and separated, that people feel comfortable riding on, increasing mass transit, supporting transit-oriented development, making it easy for people to live and commute without using a car, improving the efficiency of the vehicles that we do have and do have to use, and then, as always, outreach and education.
One of the things that in New Haven we really believe strongly in is access to safe and affordable transit is a human right. Being able to connect people from neighborhoods to jobs, to school, to opportunity is truly critical. And oftentimes, we look at some of our systems, like our bus system, it can be considered by people a transportation option of last resort. The people that take the bus are the people that can't do anything else. And we really believe that's a very significant problem. And we're actually doing a very large transit study right now called Move New Haven, that's grown out of some of these concerns to really look at our bus network and make it into a functional and practical transportation option, as opposed to an option of last resort. I think also, if you look at the development of the city in general, single occupancy vehicles, they're really inefficient from an infrastructure point of view. Look, I drive a single occupancy vehicle very often myself, and we understand there's plenty of times where we have to do that. But in our downtown, for example, where land is limited, we would much rather build an office building or a residential building or something else that generates taxes, rather than a parking garage or something else that is a lower has a lower density of economic activity. So that's why we look at our walk share, our bike share, and public transportation and carpool, all these other modes, to try to expand those so that frees up more space and more infrastructure for the things that truly create jobs and create tax and infrastructure. So Go New Haven Go is our outreach activity that the city does in partnership with a bunch of nonprofits and businesses and other institutions in town, really to try to publicize the different transportation options that we have. You don't have to pick one way. It's not like you're always in the car or always in a bus or always on your bike. We really want people to explore a transportation mix so that they can use different modes when it's most convenient for them. Also, it's a way to do transportation demand management through Go New Haven Go. We sponsor in September a lot of contests between different different groups, different businesses, different, for different size businesses and institutions where they, see how many people use alternative forms of transportation. That's very successful, and we've tracked that, and that's gotten more traction every year that we do it. So it's an important way to get people interested and excited in all the different transportation options we have.
And we're very excited to have launched Bike Share in the last few months here in New Haven. Bike Share is a really interesting case study because it's a public-private partnership where the city has not had to spend money to implement it. They use ad panels to generate revenue, and we're really excited. We've had our first 10 stations.
Yep, I think actually we've just approved up to our first 30 stations. We have 300 bikes that will be out in the community, and that will be expanding some more within a year here. We're starting to see people riding these very bright green bicycles all over town, and actually quite far from where any of the stations are, and it's really becoming a transportation option. If people want to, we have a local off-street trail of the Farmington Canal Line. People riding up that. I actually saw some people seem to be visiting from out of town, visiting the university, riding around on those. So we really think it's a way for people to, use a different transportation option very conveniently. You don't have to do all the planning of bringing your bicycle from home to downtown. So if you're on your lunch break or something, need to run a quick errand, you can grab one of these bicycles. They're very affordable. Yearly membership is $90. I think it's around $1.75 a ride. There's also for low-income residents, there's an option, I think, for a $15 a year membership as well. So we really want this to be an accessible transportation option for everyone. We did, if you'll notice on the picture here on the right, we did mostly block the ad panel, which is what supports the bike share, and that's taken a little bit of getting used to for us in the city. But I think it's been overall an understanding that a bike share is a really wonderful thing for the city, and if the ad panel is what it takes to get that done, then it's something that we can live with.
Yeah, and bike share really helps with one of the things we talked about a lot in the development of the framework is that last mile, when people take the train, but they have that last mile to get home, and this could be one of the ways to close the gap there and make other mass transit options more accessible.
We actually recently had a reporter from the New Haven Independent, newhavenindependent.org, who spent the whole week using nothing other than the bike share in all of his work and travels, and it's a wonderful read for anyone that's interested.
So the fourth strategy of materials management, we're starting to move more into a category that addresses sustainability, but waste is still a part of our greenhouse gas inventory, a smaller portion than the last three strategies. And really no surprise here, reduce, reuse, recycle are kind of the major themes of the goals. And then compost was brought up a lot, that we can increase compost. We have a local resident who has started a business collecting food waste from people's homes on his bike, composting it, and then selling or donating to urban farms in the area. And so that's something that people want to see scaled, or having a citywide compost program. And then really there is some probably low-hanging fruit here that people felt that if we just improved enforcement and compliance of regulations we already have on the books, that we would greatly improve the city's materials management, and a lot of outreach and education about what to do with certain materials. What do you do with electronics? What do you do with mattresses? How do I, go to the waste transfer station and get rid of materials or reuse materials? So there was a lot of talk about this. I think there will be a lot of movement on materials management in the coming future.
Yeah, one of the suggestions that came out of it was to have someone, sort of a project manager at our Public Works Department, to look at waste diversion and materials management. And in fact, out of that suggestion, the mayor did put that position in our budget to be paid for out of savings on our recycling program. So the adoption of the plan, again, we introduced it in January of 2018 and was adopted by our board, I believe, in early March, has already started to bear fruit here and move the city forward.
Land use in green infrastructure is one of my personal favorite topic strategies. I work a lot on this topic in the engineering department. It's definitely a topic where the impacts of climate change are already being felt in the city. We have trouble with those high intensity, short duration storms causing urban flash flooding. And so part of this strategy has to do with mitigating the impacts of that by increasing stormwater infiltration on private and public property. The pictures that are shown here on the slide show some of our bioswales that are being built in the right of way, where we're going to capture water from the streets before it gets into the storm sewer system to reduce flooding and improve water quality. It's been a great partnership that we've had, with a couple of local nonprofits, Urban Resources Initiative, Save the Sound, and here are pictures of members of Emerge, which works with the prison reentry population to do low-skilled jobs and help them get back on their feet. And so this has been a really successful project in New Haven. And then people felt also very strongly about green space in New Haven. I think we're about 20% parkland. And so, maintaining that, increasing access across the city to park space, and our urban tree canopy, both maintaining and continuing to grow that.
I want to touch a bit more on our green stormwater infrastructure. We've taken a real green first philosophy. In the engineering department, we deal with drainage problems all the time, and we really look to our entire toolkit of options to solve them and really look at our green infrastructure first. And it's been very successful, and we've done now, I think, about 40 installations, and we're now in the next year probably going to have another 300 installations coming in. So we've worked out a lot of the kinks and figured out how to build them, and we're going into sort of a mass production at this point, in conjunction also with the Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority. One of the biggest things that we've learned is that green stormwater infrastructure has to be built differently than a gray stormwater infrastructure. Which is why we've partnered with local nonprofits. They've also now started bidding on our green stormwater infrastructure jobs and winning bids. It takes a lot more outreach. We go and we talk to the neighbors. We have various plant palettes that the neighbors to the installation can select from. It's one of the real benefits, important to the mayor is working on jobs and job skills and working with Emerge, again, the prison reentry population. It's been also wonderful because they're often New Haveners. So, they're out working on a project, their friends come by, their cousins come by, whoever, and they explain what's going on, and people really start to understand. And the downside is that we get people asking us for bioswales in front of their homes where it's not necessarily an appropriate location, but I suppose that's a very good problem to have. But it's been very successful and something that we're really proud of, and we think will really help. New Haven has very sandy soils, and any water we can get out of our stormwater system and into the ground pays big dividends for our urban flash flooding issues. So we just talked about one side of climate change resiliency, which is rainwater. The other is looking at shoreline protection. New Haven's a coastal town. We have a beautiful harbor. We encourage you to come down and see it. We have a wonderful food truck paradise right next to the harbor. We got 20-something food trucks there every day for you to come and enjoy. You know, we have this coastline, and different from a lot of other parts of Connecticut is that the bulk of it is actually non-residential. A lot of it's parks. We have a working commercial port, and trying to find a way to protect our infrastructure while creating infrastructure that works not only during large storms, but also for the other, you know, out of 1,000 days, the other 999 days. So we've really been looking a lot at living shorelines and green infrastructure for resiliency. So here is a beautiful rendering of a very expensive boardwalk, but it has a lot of the elements that you know, we look at for a living shoreline strategy. We have some intertidal wetlands. We have a high marsh, you know, some sort of almost dune-like structures in it. And the walkway here provides coastal access and the ability for people to enjoy. It's a little too wide, and I don't think we can afford a 20-foot wide walkway, but we'll work on that as we go forward. So we're trying to, this is the end vision here. You know, in 2050, we'll probably have to build the flood wall that you see along the side as well to protect I-95, and there's a lot of critical infrastructure in Long Wharf Drive, which is the street right behind it. But we're right now working on finalizing design for 3,000 feet of living shoreline, which I think has a couple acres of wetland restoration in it, and generally grading back the shoreline to be a lot more resilient. And also, as sea levels rise, Yukon Circus says that we could see up to 20 inches of sea level rise by 2050. The natural systems that we're establishing can also migrate as well. We're trying to get away from the thought of a shoreline. It's really more of a shore area. We expect these systems to change and move a bit, and we try to create those expectations in the community so that a living shoreline that moves and changes with storms and the seasons is seen as an asset to the community and something that brings interest and beauty to the area, as opposed to you know, more traditional methods, which, you know, like a revetment. I always used to say that nobody goes to a beach to see a revetment, but I had an engineer in the audience once tell me that no, he goes to see revetments. So almost nobody goes to see a revetment. You know, we really want to create systems that work throughout the year and also protect us during those storm events.
And our final strategy within the framework is food. And food was actually the toughest maybe to directly tie to climate, but is very important in terms of sustainability. New Haven has a very active food policy council that created this action plan in 2013 and is currently undergoing an update to that plan. And, you know, while they're addressing very important needs of hunger and food access, you know, including food in this plan was a way to tie and highlight the ways in which sustainability is addressed within food. And so part of that was promoting local food, not necessarily because of carbon reduction, but also to strengthen our local and regional economy, improve access to healthy foods, decreasing food waste, and then just engaging the public in the process of updating the plan and just in food policy in general. So at the same time, kind of in parallel, we have been working on updating our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So using 2015 data would be our third inventory in the city. Part of that also is a requirement. The city joined the Compact of Mayors shortly after, I think in 2016.
Early 2017.
Early 2017. Okay, so as we were undergoing this process, you know, all these, there's a lot of different groups out there that are working on this, but we thought it was really important to take a stand in a national sense, but also it is now gotten turned over to the Global Covenant of Mayors, and so now we're on the global scene for addressing climate change.
in times where we see a lack of climate leadership in the upper echelons of our government,
that's what it was.
it's really, Mayor Harp and mayors across the country and across the world, at the community level is where the effects of climate change are hit the hardest. And we see them, every day already in the decisions we have to make around climate, around infrastructure. And so, joining the Global Compact of Mayors, it was a way for Mayor Harp to really take a stand and say that, this is an issue that affects us now, will affect us even more so in the future, and change really has to be led by the local level.
And as part of that, signing on to that covenant, we will have to continue to make an action plan and to demonstrate how we will meet and set a goal and how we will meet that. A summary of our emissions so far. This is a draft. We are still finalizing it, but most of our emissions are due to buildings, both electric power and warming and heating our buildings, transportation, solid waste.
All right. So one of the things that the advocates and the public, as we went through our process on the climate and sustainability framework, was to set that they really kept talking about was setting an aggressive goal. We were looking at our emissions inventories, and the New Haven climate movement really wanted New Haven to lead by example, and they asked us to set a goal of 55% decrease from 1999 emissions by 2030, which we came out with. I think it was right about at the same time that the state came out with its goal. So we're trying to be very aggressive about this. We're pushing hard. There are many things, we are showing a decrease already from our 1999 emissions. We're still chasing that down. The 2015 number is still draft. We want to make sure that, those are real decreases as opposed to, some slight changes in methodology and things like that. But I think the trend has been that. Cities as being compact are places that really do see, benefits in terms of efficiency. Also, sort of the less nice side of it is that, there's been certain shifts in the economy of the city, and some of our larger industrial users that have left. So that probably contributes to it as well, to a certain extent, a little less nice, obviously. But it is something that we look at as New Haven's economy shifts and our population continues to grow. It's something that we definitely want to keep a close tab on. So right as we were finishing our climate and sustainability framework, Sustainable Connecticut launched. And we really welcome the opportunity to have to find ways for the two things to work together here in our local community. And we think that, rather than seeing it as all these different things around climate that don't really match, we really see Sustainable Connecticut as a benchmarking tool for us to see what our progress has been on the climate and sustainability framework. These are the 9 different areas that Sustainable CT has, and I think pretty much it's pretty much complete overlap with our 6 strategies that we have in our climate sustainability framework. So we'll be spending a lot of time this summer. We have some help from some interns at Yale to compile our Sustainable Connecticut scorecard, and that will also serve as a way to track progress in our climate sustainability framework. So we're very excited to be one of the towns. We want to be one of the first, but due to our council process, we have a board of alders. It takes 3 months to get anything through. We were in the middle of the pack, but we're very excited to be part of it.
Yeah, and I think it'll help with outreach and just being able to document what we're already doing and sharing that with a larger community. So I think this is just another way to generate excitement about sustainability in our town and across the state. And as Giovanni said, we're very happy to be a part of it.
I think it also kind of forces us to make sure that we do the reporting as well.
That too.
So moving forward is a very nice shot that we had one of the people working on the project that contributed from their drone flight. You know, there's a lot of excitement. Again, the Board of Alders, which is our legislative body, adopted the Climate and Sustainability Framework as our official plan for the city on climate and sustainability. The New Haven Climate Movement and a lot of other advocates are getting together and planning a climate summit for New Haven in the early fall in September. We're working with them right now to plan that and have panels on the different areas. We're already starting to implement things. I talked a bit before about how we're going to have a materials management project manager that will work on enhancing our diversion rate and getting better and more compliance on materials management. There are many other initiatives that I won't go through right now, but that we're working on right now that will meet the actions and goals of the Climate Sustainability Framework. And we're really thankful for our advocate community for keeping our feet to the fire and making sure that, you know, what we're doing, you know, we really keep the thought of sustainability central in everything that we do and integrate it throughout our city departments and functions. So with that, thank you very much. I think we'll have some time now for questions. You can feel free to email us if you want to read a copy of the report. There isn't a particularly easy URL that I can give you, but if you go to newhavenct.gov/engineering, that's our engineering department website. On the left-hand side, you'll see sustainability.
One of the things we want to work on.
Yes, one of the things we're working on is a website that shows a bit that's a little more dedicated to the plan. And then I don't know how many people use Twitter, but we're on Twitter. You can see a lot of the fun infrastructure that we're building, a lot of green infrastructure this summer. You know, we're doing, you know, probably 100 installations or more, and you'll see a lot of pictures of that. So follow us on there if you want to see that. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you to both of you. That was a really insightful and wonderful presentation. And I just want to applaud your efforts and, serving as a great model for other communities to follow your lead. And just, mention the demonstration of innovative partnerships is phenomenal. Your bike share program, the Emerge program, which I actually was not familiar with, and your, Go New Haven Go, the partnership, the aspect of the important partnerships created there, I think is something to note. And then just reiterating, it is local action that's taking leadership on climate. Our federal government clearly is not taking the lead, and really, states and communities have always been in the lead. So again, props to New Haven for doing such a great job of staying on the path to creating a sustainable community. So with that, I will open it up for questions. If you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the question box and send them to me directly. I have a good chunk right now that I'll go ahead and start with. The first one was actually the website. So it looks like if you want to get to the actual report, you can go to the website that Giovanni has on the screen right now. We also have it posted on our website. If you go to our GC3 webinar series landing page, it's posted there. And actually, I could probably type it in at some point here and share it with everyone via the chat message. So there's that. Measurement and verification of progress. You mentioned Sustainable CT, which I want to encourage folks who are in towns who haven't joined Sustainable CT, please do so, or get your communities to participate. Is that the primary mechanism for reporting out progress, or do you have other ways in mind?
Well, I would say that it's the first mechanism here. We just passed this, and there's a deadline here at I think the end of August here for putting in for Sustainable CT. So we're going to try that. I think those measurement and verification was something that we spent a lot of time thinking about. It's sort of the upside of not having dedicated staff and staff that does other stuff as well is that we integrate sustainability really wonderfully in what we do. The downside is that, it is a little harder to find the time to dedicate for that sort of follow-up and reporting. But we are very lucky that we have, partners in the community that are willing to help us with that. Also, the Yale, we're able to usually get interns, a couple interns in the summer from Yale or Quinnipiac or any other institutions around here to help us specifically on climate. There's a lot of interest around that. So this summer we're going to focus on reporting out for climate for sustainable CT. We had talked also about there'd be sort of an appendix every couple of years to the plan that really goes through all of the strategies, goals, and actions, and reports out progress there. We want to not duplicate efforts too much here, so we're trying to see if we can marry the two things together, and if in working with our community, if there's a feeling that we need to do really a separate and discrete reporting, separate from sustainable CT, we'll obviously do that as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of uncertainty for greenhouse gas emission reduction, at least, to put a number. I've seen a lot of plans that put a number on each action and how much you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There's a lot of uncertainty in that number, and I feel that sometimes people get too drawn to that, and even though there's a huge error bar around whether or not that action actually creates that emission reduction. And so it was kind of agreed upon, rather than spending a lot of energy on that at this point, to release the framework and kind of leave it as something that will continue to be discussed in the summit and in future meetings.
Great. How does New Haven deal with zoning requirements that require parking spaces for new buildings?
That's interesting enough. I was actually at our City Plan Commission last night talking about a special exception to reduce required parking for a new community center that we're building in our Dixwell neighborhood. I think it's a combination of certain areas, the zoning simply doesn't require any parking spaces. In other areas, we're pretty aggressive with giving special exceptions for reduced parking requirements. They're frankly a decent portion of our BZA agenda. And also, it's something as we look to change our zoning ordinance, and that's something that is coming down here, and it's an action in our framework to really follow the lead of other municipalities. I think Hartford actually just did something on this to really reduce those parking requirements much further or eliminate them.
Great, thanks. Will the bike share program run all year round, even in the snow?
Yes.
People's choice whether they're going to ride them in the snow or not, but yes, we
see a lot of people riding. We actually have, I think, the longest on-street separated two-way cycle track in the state on Long Wharf Drive. We actually had to change the law in order to make it legal. And that is something that we, the first snowstorm, our Parks Department kind of forgot to plow it immediately. And we immediately heard about that. And now we know, there's plenty of people that use it in the winter and all of our bicycle infrastructure in the winter. So very much a 12-month-a-year program.
Great. Actually, a follow-up question on the bike share program. Did the city, just clarification, I think, did the city have to pay anything to participate in the bike share program?
No, I mean, the only thing we gave was in-kind staff time to manage the program and to, write the contract and all that sort of stuff. But no, we have not paid anything to the vendor.
Great, that's good news for a lot of communities. So is New Haven considering the pay-as-you-throw model for waste?
Yes, we are. I think all of the options for waste are on the table. It's something we talk a lot about internally. We're working with Deep right now on a study of it. I think there's a lot of questions, I think, in the community about it, how to make sure that it's equitable, how to make sure that, it's not an undue burden on, on people that maybe have less economic means. But we certainly understand that is where we need to go. There's a lot of education around that. There's a lot of things that we have to do in materials management to make sure that it really works. I don't think it's something that we can just, flick a switch and tomorrow do it in New Haven. But we're really trying to build the capacity to get to that point. We understand that that's the way to get to those truly great diversion rates. But it's a process that we have to go through, and it's something that our framework certainly very much emphasizes.
Excellent. What is the city doing to improve energy efficiency of city buildings, schools, and streetlights?
Well, we've gone to LED streetlights. I think we were one of the first communities in the state to do so. We actually own our own streetlights, so that was beneficial. Lighting has been the best payback period so far, so we're doing a lot of lighting. We're actually starting to get into lighting controls as well. For example, you got a tunnel that's on 24/7. We're changing it to LED lighting, but also a motion sensor controls that if no one's in the tunnel, like the middle of the night, that the lights all dim down further. And as soon as someone pulls into the tunnel, then the lights start to turn on. We're trying to really aggressively go after all the energy efficiency things that we can. Our board has actually given us sort of a bond allocation each year for energy efficiency projects. We also take advantage of a lot of the programs of the Energy Efficiency Fund through the local utility. And really, it's part of simple general maintenance. The engineering department, we're responsible for a larger number of the non-Board of Ed buildings at the city. As parts fail, we immediately swap to LED or to better controls or whatever, and really integrate that into our standard maintenance schedule.
Great. Are you doing any regional collaboration with the programs you mentioned, such as Bike Share or Living Shoreline? And if the person who wrote that question had more specifics, feel free to write in.
I'm sure on our Bike Share, we would love to start, looking to some of our neighbors. There's certainly opportunities for that. I was actually in Hamden, I think a week or two ago, and there were 2 people riding our Bike Share bikes all the way up in Hamden. So there is opportunity there. I think the Bike Share vendor has focused so far on the real downtown and dense core of New Haven. Bike Share programs do require a certain density. We'd be very open. If any of our neighbors are on the webinar, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. We do want to work with you. Living Shorelines, so far, because we've been focused on 2 sites that are really in New Haven, we do take part in a lot of the conferences and things that DEEP puts together and others, and try to do as much information sharing around Living Shorelines, also green stormwater infrastructure around the state, share our standard details, share our designs, and really try to collaborate as a state on how to best tackle these problems. Okay,
are you partnering with local health department or local healthcare facilities on the active transportation goals?
I believe our health department is involved. We also, I think Go New Haven Go has some monthly walks that they sponsor through a neighborhood. I think there's also, I want to say, I admit I don't actually run Go New Haven Go, so I'm not intimately familiar with all of the details of it. But I do, yes, I mean, certainly our health department is very interested in active lifestyles and goals. I believe they are part of Go New Haven Go and do help out with that. On our side of it, we're much more on the infrastructure side and making sure that we have that safe infrastructure, the sidewalks, the bike lanes, and things like that to encourage active and healthy lifestyles. And it was, that was one of the other things that really helps us as we go out to the community and, often propose new bike lanes or sidewalks and things like that, and talk about the benefits of an active lifestyle. A lot of the things that are good for climate change have a lot of other benefits. And one of the things we found is really trying to make sure that our messaging in all of our communities hit all of those points, because certainly at least one of them is going to resonate with pretty much everyone in the room.
Great. How does the framework contribute to the creation of jobs and small businesses for city residents? Beyond just tracking the numbers, is there programs that prepare and train people for these job opportunities?
I mean, I think the plan pushes us towards actions that have that effect. I think the most direct one is the fact that our green stormwater infrastructure, you know, a lot of the labor comes from a job skills training program. You know, the people work for Emerge. They spend 3 days out in the field working. 2 days is spent in the classroom learning job skills, life skills, financial management, and things like that. I think that's probably our most direct connection so far. But, you know, oftentimes more sustainable ways of managing things, and many of those actions are more labor intensive and they're less you know, capital intensive. So one of the things we really like about our green stormwater infrastructure is that it doesn't require a backhoe. In downtown, we actually hand dig all of our green stormwater infrastructure because of the huge number of utilities and laterals and things like that, and also the traffic impacts of large equipment, very much mitigated by simply having people dig them out. And it's, you know, everyone looks at us, you know, like we're crazy whenever we say that, but it actually works out that the time, you know, takes about the same amount of time, and it's you're able to start faster and end faster because you don't have to bring in all this heavy equipment. So, you know, as we go through the actions of the report, we'll certainly keep trying to find ways to partner with the community, nonprofits and members and whatnot to create opportunities similar to that one.
Great. Sorry, a lot of questions here. How will New Haven market the new plan so it reaches the whole community and create buy-in? Who do you intend the audience to be?
I mean, the audience is the entirety of the city, both everyone who lives here, everyone who works here, all of the institutions. You know, we rely a lot on the, I think it was like 30 different groups that signed on to the original letter asking the mayor to update the climate action plan. You know, we
have a list of 150 people that have participated thus far, and they could each spread to their own networks. There were people from a greater New Haven area, had people from other towns coming and asking how, you know, we could help them get their towns to do things, which maybe is a little outside our scope, but also,
you know, we reached out to community management teams, which are, you know, sort of neighborhood level groups of people that get together and talk about the things happening in their neighborhood at a hyper local level.
And we're meeting in next week with members of the New Haven Climate Movement to talk about this summit and how we're going to do outreach and how we're going to get people involved beyond people that have already been involved. So I think, you know, holding an event and giving due time to organize that event and do really good outreach is part of what we'll be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we do have to face is that not everyone, you know, not all 130,000 people in the city of New Haven are going to be interested necessarily in this climate and sustainability framework such that it is. However, I would say that in the 97 actions, every one of those people is going to have one of those actions that is really going to speak to them and something that they're interested in. So, you know, as we go into neighborhoods and we talk about traffic calming projects, you know, things that make our streets more walkable and bikeable, you know, very much a goal of our climate sustainability framework. But, you know, oftentimes people really come to that for other reasons, not just because it's in the climate sustainability framework. So in those discussions, we make sure that we reference the framework and keep tying back to it. And I think at the end of the day, you know, you'll see a lot of everyone will see the effects of the framework, whether or not it's, you know, they consciously know that it is from the framework. But it is a very big challenge. It's one that we haven't fully cracked, how to make everyone aware of this. And you know, it's continuing to be an issue. You know, we sort of err on the side of just going out and getting projects done, as opposed to spending a huge amount of time in the sort of the publicizing side of it. And I think that's one of the things that the community, quite frankly, came to us and said, look, you're doing a lot of great stuff. You really need to talk about what you're doing more and why you're doing it. And that's really what the framework gives us.
Great. I think those are some really good points. One last question. Is there any reason, a particular reason, that the transportation component of your plan does not include alternative fuel such as propane, CNG, biodiesel, and electricity?
I actually am not entirely, I thought it was in there, or whether directly or as part of it. Certainly alternative fuels are a big portion of what we believe in. I think we were the first municipality in the state to give a parking, we actually gave free parking to hybrids that were registered in the city. Very much, air quality is a big concern in New Haven. We're a northeast city. Electric vehicles is a big, is a big push and a big change that we're going to see, along with autonomous vehicles that will really change how our transportation systems work. I think there's less that a municipality can do under its direct control to encourage adoption of that beyond what we're doing already with parking, free public parking and things like that. And we heard a lot from our community that they wanted to create infrastructure that allows people to use different types of transit, and using creating focusing on the things that we as a city can control much more. But I think that's a very good feedback. We'll certainly look to add that or addend that onto the report. It may also simply have been an oversight through the editing process, but it's certainly something that came up repeatedly in our process and something we very much believe in.
Great. So again, I want to thank, we're 1 o'clock right on the dot, I think, here. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And I just want to, again, applaud your efforts and thank you so much for participating in the series. And we look forward to, circling back to you and hearing about all the great progress. So for those on the line, thanks for participating. It is saved on our will be saved on our website within the next day or two. So for those who you think might be interested in viewing it, please send them to our website, as well as viewing any of the other ones you or your colleagues or friends might have missed. So stay tuned. We don't have a webinar scheduled for May yet. If you have ideas, please feel free to send them. We're always looking for new and fresh ideas. And stay tuned, and we'll let you know when the next one is available. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.